Welcome everybody back to another edition of the Free Agent Fans Podcast. I'm Mike Jr. coming at you today, and today I was gonna do a podcast today on who are we, and I kind of still am, but today is just gonna be a kind of basic, just an introduction to it, because I decided I want to make it possibly into a series. As far as who are we, because as I was thinking about it, I can go in so many different directions. It's just going to be a brief little introduction as to who I am and how the whole Free Agent Fans Podcast came to be. And I was thinking to myself, man, I could go deeper and possibly even get the backgrounds and the stories of some of my other guests that have been or what I would call somewhat regulars on the show, like the fellas and my nieces and my wife. As it stands right now, those are the people you'll hear the most. We're gonna try to branch out, but stay tuned because we got a lot of good topics coming up. It's the holiday season. I took some time off last week or the week before for Veterans Day. I am a veteran. There's a little bit about who I am. Served in the first Gulf War and saw a lot of stuff that kind of made you grow up. You go from 18 to 30 in the course of maybe an hour of seeing some stuff that you normally wouldn't see, but did that and learned a lot, gained a lot of experience in areas that kind of shaped my life in ways that I didn't see coming, that nobody could see coming, I guess. But yeah, it was interesting. I remember my father, who has passed on now. If you've been listening, you know this. If you listen to some of the past podcasts, I lost my father to cancer. And I remember when I was first saying that I was going to go into the military, he was like, don't go, son. My father was a little history of who I am. My father was locked up at the time. He was doing some prison time, and he didn't. I think he got locked up my junior year in high school, and it would have been one of my sisters, her senior year. It was either my sophomore year or my junior year, her junior year or senior year, and he was gonna do 8 years. So, and I joined right after high school, and it was towards the end of the first Gulf War, and I remember him reaching out to me when, he's like, no, don't do it, son, don't go. I think we had a phone call, and he was like, oh, I wish you would have talked to me, because I had already signed up, and he was like, oh, I wish you would have called me or talked to me. Don't go. And I get it. My pops was probably a little concerned. I am his namesake. I carry his name, being a junior, and there's probably a lot of fears there, because he's got 2 other sons. It's just I have his name, and he probably would have felt the same way about his other 2 going as well. Like, I don't want to lose them. I'm pretty sure he would have. But at that time, that's what it was. And I remember him saying it, and I'm like, well, Pops, I already signed up. It's a done deal. I signed the paperwork and everything. I'm getting shipped out. I think I had to wait 3 months in what they call the delayed entry program before I would meet my ship, because I went Navy. And so I remember that. And a little more of my childhood, I didn't grow up with either one of my brothers. One of my brothers, I don't know him at all. I just know his name, and we've seen him on Facebook. And right before Pops passed, he did confirm that is our brother. But and so did my aunt that lives in Colorado, where my dad was at when he passed. She also confirmed it. But my other brother, love him to death. We didn't grow up together, and I don't know my other brother that I don't talk to not love him. But if we ever did talk, I'm pretty sure we'd click. But my older brother, the one that I don't talk to, he's younger. I think he's my dad's youngest child. So he stole the youngest mantle from me. But my other brother, who's older than I am, we connected. We knew of each other as kids. He came around, but I was kind of too little. I didn't really remember him a whole lot. He was in and out, and I think maybe right after high school or during high school, they moved to Minnesota. His mom moved him there, and he would come to St. Louis where we were, and visit at times. But I rarely remember. But we really connected when we got older as adults, and it's just been beautiful ever since. That's like brothers and sisters should be, because I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers. So my math ain't the greatest. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 6. So it's 6 of us that we know of. And Pops, before he died, he confirmed. He said that's it. But he was a Rolling Stone. So if that's really it, I don't know. But I'm gonna take his word for it. So, but a little more of I guess my history. Growing up with I grew up with my mom and my 3 sisters. That kind of shaped me to be the person that I am today in many ways, numerous ways that I can think of. It helped me a lot because, I got to see some things. I got to learn some things about women. And, I wrote a book. It's kind of I don't want to say a biography because it's not really my whole life story, but I guess it is kind of a biography. But it's called Introducing Men, and it's really about introducing me. And it talks about how I used what I learned growing up with my mom and my sisters to manipulate and pretty much get what I wanted out of women as far as sex. And I'm pretty sure I mentioned this on a podcast before, but if you like to read, check that book out. It's on Amazon.com, Introducing Men, capital M, capital E, and a lowercase n. But yeah, you get it. Introducing men. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, so I did that, and I do write. I am a writer. And in future podcasts, I will talk more about my writing because I got a project that I'm really on fire about. That's a little bit something else about me. Who am I? I'm a writer. It's what I do. It's one of the things that I love to do outside of podcasting. And podcasting is just recently became a love for me. I was always, I never really liked hearing my voice back, so I didn't listen to it, and it's like, I sound weird. But other people like, oh, you got a cool voice, it's decent, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, I just never really, and then when I started doing it, it was like, oh, this is fun. And then people started joining in. I got my nieces, and I got to see how interesting the stuff that they have to talk about was. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is good. And then when the fellas joined in, it's like, okay, I can see me doing this. And, it's a lot that brings enjoyment, I guess I can say. So, yeah. So, but writing, it was my first love. I started writing when I was like 15 in high school. And I went to a segregated school. And, there was some N-words thrown around. And, I, coming from an all-black school, being thrown into this integrated school where I felt like they didn't want me out there anyway, I kind of developed I guess maybe super pro-black attitude. I was heavy into X-Clan. I don't know if you're old enough, you know who X-Clan is. And, ISIS, Queen ISIS, and, Brother Jay, and, great group. Look them up, Google them, listen to some of their music. But I really got into that pro-black mentality, and I just kind of shut everything else out. I'm like, okay, they don't like us. I ain't got no reason to like them, blah, blah, blah. But boy, did that change when I got to that school, and some of the people, well, when I kind of got I guess, integrated more into the school. And some of the people were just like the coolest people I ever met, and they just like, I ignore them. They're ignorant. Don't pay any attention to them. And I got a lot of that, and it surprised me. And I'm like, whoa, is this how people really are? So they really don't. Not all of them are like this. They really don't care. Because my grandfather, I told you before, he was a bit of a racist. And, he didn't want me having white friends. He didn't want me dating white women or any of that. And he was adamant about it. But my mom, she was the opposite. She was like, date who you want to date, love who you want to love, be friends with who you want to be friends with, period. But love my grandfather to death. And, that'll never change. That was my dude. He taught me a lot about being a man as well when my pops wasn't around. So that, didn't change, but I'm glad I had my mom because she kind of kept me grounded. And, and when I started receiving all this positivity from other kids in the school, I was like, okay, so everything ain't like that. All right. And I started having lots of friends that of different races. And, that also kind of shaped me as to who I am today. Because I tell you like this, man, you don't have to date outside your race or whatever it is, and people need to stop getting all upset when people say they don't date outside their race. That's their preference. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make you a racist just because you're a white guy that only dates white women or a black woman that only dates black men. It doesn't make you racist. It's just what you prefer. What makes you racist is some of the other stuff that people do when they, take on that mantle of, oh, I'm not going to do this. And you start throwing around derogatory terms and things like that. So back up off that. Let people date and do whatever with whoever. And, don't take it so hard and so harsh like it's something wrong with it. But that kind of helped shape me. And, I'm a much better person for it because of the bonds and the friendships that I have and that I made. And I've told this story numerous times to numerous people throughout. I think my old high school had it has a alumni board or something like that on Facebook, and I told this story. I put this story on Facebook. I had a teacher, and he was part of the reason that really opened my eyes to that. There's not as much hate as you think. That those people that do, they are ignorant, and not everybody thinks like them because he was my probability and statistics teacher, Mr. Will. And I'll never forget this guy because I used to go into his class, and this was during the Crip and Blood era. I ain't gonna lie about that. Everything, my home life was a little different from my school life. When I went to school, we joned on the freshmen on the bus. It was just normal things. You do what you do. And when I got into my classes, I would sleep. And cause that's when I got my sleep. Because sometimes, I needed some rest from whatever I was doing in my home life that carried over into school. But I used to go into Mr. Will's class, and I would put my head down. And there was a guy in there, and I don't know if he'll ever hear this podcast, but I still play Words with Friends with him to this day. And everybody in the school called him Wilkie, and he used to call me Little Mikey. I was a real small, short, skinny guy back then. I'm 6'4", over 200 pounds now, but back in high school, I was probably about 5'7" and weighed about 3 pounds. But he would call me Little Mikey, and he would always smile and joke with me a little bit, and then I would put my head down and go to sleep. And Mr. Will would always wake me up, tell me to go to the chalkboard and try to solve one of the problems that he was presenting to the class. And I would just stand there with the chalkboard. The burnouts in the back of the class, they would laugh and be like, he don't know it. And I'm like, what y'all laughing at? I don't know it either. But I would stand there, and then he would say, okay, go sit down. And I would go sit down, put my head back down, go to sleep. I had a good solid D, very close to an F in that class when the first semester was over. This was my senior year in high school. And I went to my counselor before the second semester I had to take probability and statistics too. It was the same teacher. And, I went and I told my counselor, hey, I want to take a study hall. And my counselor looked at me like, dude, are you crazy? Like, you do know if you don't pass all of your classes, you will not graduate high school. That's how, on the cusp I was. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So I went back, same teacher, Mr. Will, second half of that class. Close to the end of the school year, getting close to graduation or whenever, when the seniors get out of school, I pulled that grade up to a B. I believe it was a B in that class. And I'll never forget this moment. And I'll tell a little more after this, but it's probably a good spot to end. But I'll talk a little more about this. But I'll never forget this day. I was walking out of the class and he called me. He was like, I don't know if they called you, but I can't remember if he called me my first name or last name or whatever. Maybe he said Mr. Griffin or whatever. Come to my desk. Let me talk to you. And I walked up to his desk. I'm like, what this dude want? Because I was not really interested. And he turned his grade book around towards me. And he said, I want you to look at something. And I looked down at his grade book. He said, this is your grade. These are your grades from the first half, the first semester in my class. And you saw D, F, C, D, whatever, and then some percentages, like 60%, 80%, whatever, however they were grading. But it was not good, the first half. And then he's like, these are your grades, the second half of my class. And it was 80s, A's, B's, and telling this story, I kind of tear up a little bit because I think about the man that this guy was. And to me, he didn't see any color because, I didn't know him in his personal life. I don't know how his family was. But to me, in this moment, he revealed a lot about himself to me, that he didn't see any color because he showed me those grades in the second half. And he closed that book, turned it back around to him, and he looked up at me and he said, son, I'm going to tell you something. He said, you cannot pass this class without knowing what was happening in the first half of the class. That's not how it works. You cannot. He said, so that tells me, number one, when you had your head down, you were paying attention. And he was right. I was. I just felt like they didn't want me there, so I would just put my head down like I was asleep so I could just block out. I didn't see any of the kids that didn't want me there, but I was listening to everything he said and how to do those problems. And he told me, he said, you're a black man in America. Things are going to be hard for you as it is already. And he said, son, please don't make it harder for yourself. And at that time, I can't remember exactly his word, but it was right along that line as to what he told me. And I remember kind of being frozen there, just standing there and kind of just nodded my head, and I walked out of his class. It never really resonated with me until I became an adult. I think well after my military time, and I started thinking about that story and thinking about this teacher. And I think I think he passed away by now, and I really would have loved to have just hugged him or shook his hand, because he really changed my life, and I didn't even know it at that point. But I walked out of that classroom and I'm thinking, okay, that was it. But it was years later that I thought, man, why me? This dude didn't have to care, because I had so many other teachers out there that just let me put my head down, and it was like, I don't care, and we had one teacher, I think he was a history teacher, and it's like, oh yeah, he let all the blacks sleep. He doesn't care. He just gives us all C's. And yeah, sure enough, I had a C in his class, but not Mr. Will. And I will never forget that day and what he told me. It still sticks with me, and I still tear up a bit when I think about this story. But, that's just one of the things that helped shape me, that kind of, change my path and my direction and how I see people and how I see relationships as I grew older. And thinking about that story, and one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't get to talk to him. And, for some reason, I just wanted to, let him see, hey, I listened, man. I did. I went to the military. I made something out of myself. Look at me now, Mr. Will. And I hope, it's a part of me that hopes that he sees. And he's like, I got through to one of them at least, and you did. And I thank you for that. But, at that time, I was just a kid, and I'm thinking, they don't want us out here. I ain't got to pay attention, but I really was. And I did very well the second half of that class. But so that's part of some of the things that make me who I am. But like I said, I'm going to go a lot deeper as we continue. I want to make this more than just one series. I probably won't pick it up next week. I got some other stuff coming up for you guys, so I'll come back to the Who Are We series a little later, and I may run this one again to kick it off, but I just wanted to get this out. But I want to end this, and it'll just be specifically with Who Are We, but I just wanted to end this one today. I'm not going to talk about me anymore, but I was watching Meet the Press. I watch Meet the Press on Sundays before church, or sometimes I have to miss it. It depends on if I go to the 9 o'clock service or a 10 o'clock service. But I was watching it this Sunday, and he did an interview in about 30 minutes on John, is it Pence? I think the former vice president. And I was watching this dude, and it really got me. My wife's like, dude, you should podcast on that, because you got really upset because I'm listening and talking to this dude. I mean, not talking to him, but I'm listening to this dude talk to the host, Chuck Todd. And he was asking questions, typical politician, like they always do, avoid the questions, don't really answer it, give these base answers so they can keep their fan base and not piss off the racists who are going to vote for him, and at the same time try to not piss off the independents who might vote for them. And I'm watching this, and I watch this kind of stuff because I am an independent, and I have no problem with voting for a Republican or a Democrat as long as they line up with what I feel I want. And they never really do, neither party, but we end up, in the end of the day, we have to pick one. So, and I try to go with the least crazy. And so, that'll give you an idea who I didn't vote for last time. I wasn't all big on my grandfather being president, but I definitely wasn't finna put crazy back in office. But anyway, so I was watching this, and he's just going on dodging questions or whatever. And so I think me and my wife got to talking, and I was asking her, and she was saying, well, I just believe that he was bullied and he was afraid of, ticking off Trump and his fan base or whatever. And I was like, nah, I can't co-sign that. These guys are cowards, and this is what I see Pence as: a coward, a phony, and a liar. Simply because he sat on that show in the chair across from Chuck Todd and talked about how he loved the Lord and the Constitution and all this and that. But dude, you sat in office for 4 years and watched this man pretty much wipe his ass with our Constitution. You sat in the office with this man for 4 years and watched him pretty much spit on everything God stood for. But you're going to sit on this show and say how much you love God and you love this Constitution, but you couldn't do anything back then. And now you want to say something. And I call bogus on that, man. I don't want to hear that crap. And it's like so many people do this, and they say that they get to spewing all this. Oh, I want to, it was just against my values and this and that. So all the other stuff he did while you were serving as his vice president wasn't against your values and your morals. But now all of a sudden, what is he doing so wrong now? He ain't even president anymore. So now it's against your morals. And when he wanted to, I didn't have the power to change the election. Yeah, we know that, we get that, man. But you could have spoke out about so many numerous other things that this dude was doing way before that. And there's a ton of crap that we probably don't even know about, that only they know about because they were in these rooms. And the dude got documents in his house and all this and that. So I was looking at this dude. I'm like, man, sit your funky ass down, because I ain't buying nothing you saying. I don't believe you, and it's time we as a country start calling these guys on their bullshit, man. I mean, they keep us divided with this point system, and I know this is all the way off, but in a way, this is kind of who I am. This is what made me an independent. Listening to these Democrats and Republicans just run this same bullshit line. Oh, we're for you, and they all do this, and they try to, and all they do is keep us all divided. So just think about that. Because I'm gonna tell you something. One of the main reasons, and I'm gonna end this with this. This is one of the main reasons you can tell that we all divided. That they don't really give a shit about you. Because look at all these shootings going on. Democrats get up there and say they want to change this and they want to do that and change the laws, but where's the fight in that? They don't really fight for that. And the Republicans, they don't say anything because they know they ain't trying to change any gun laws. And the reason for that being is because they both getting kickbacks from the NRA. And, everybody got their hand in their pocket. And that's a lot of fucking money. So you think you finna come to Joe Biden or Donald Trump and say, hey, this is going to cost you your millions of dollar kickbacks from the NRA to save my kid's life, when, number one, none of their kids are in those schools. These schools that are getting shot up, these places that are getting shot up, their relatives, their kids, they're not there. It's ours. And we run our asses off to the polls and we scream at each other and we call each other names and we bicker and fight. But it's us out here dying. Not them, not their kids. So think about this shit. It's us. We out here dying, fighting each other, and vote for me. I'm going to help. I'm going to change this. I'm going to do this. And the whole time they just patting their pockets and thinking, I get on TV, my condolences to the family, my condolences to this. You could have did something about it if it wasn't so easy for these people to get these assault weapons. And don't get me wrong, I love guns. I love them. But I think they shouldn't be in the hands of certain people, especially if you know they got a mental. How many times have we seen it where, he had mental issues before, the police were called before, the gun should have been taken away. Man, get the hell out of here. It's us dying, y'all. It's our kids. It's us crying and having horrible Thanksgivings and Christmases because all we can do is reminisce about who got shot and this mass shooting, that mass shooting, the kids in the college at Virginia, the University of Virginia. You know what I'm saying? All of this. It's us, not them. Think about that and wake the hell up and let's do something about it. I don't know what yet, but we do something. I want to thank you guys for joining me today and listening to my little rant. But like I said, we're going to come back. We're going to revisit who are we. But be tuned next Monday. I got some really good, I'm about to run off some really good series of podcasts. And I got one that I think you all will really like. It's going to be the fellas and the ladies as well. And I got a couple of more coming up with my nieces. So stay tuned. Keep listening. Check out my website, thefreeagentfans.com. Let us know what you think. Join us. Keep in touch. And, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. This Thanksgiving holiday, I'm going to eat a lot. Try not to eat a lot, but just enjoy and find something to be thankful for, like being alive for one. Y'all stay blessed. Tune in next week.